Welcome on in to Birds 365, a Titans Thursday for you here with your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald, along with my buttoned-up partner. That's literally today with a shirt. We'll find out if it's figuratively as well over the next 2 hours here on Birds 365. J Mac, you feeling any better today?
Yeah. Touch and go, Jody. Sometimes you take a step forward, sometimes you take two back. I'm probably closer to the latter.
Yikes. All right.
But who knows? I don't feel that bad. It's just a matter of voice type things that are given me. But I don't feel that bad for every day sort of thing. Just can't shake it.
Apparently, though, that something's going around with the Eagles. We know A.J. Brown had it bad over the weekend, including getting sick enough to pop a blood vessel in his eye. Other Eagles, is that a case? Is it a John McMullen, maybe part of the media thing going around, or is this something that the Eagles?
Well, a lot of people have been sick, but you've had the illness here and there, but the Eagles do a good job of trying to keep those guys like when AJ, keep them out of the locker room to limit the spread as much as possible. I stayed out of the locker room last week when I was contagious, or as the doctors say. So everybody tries to do their part. My buddy Ed Kratz hasn't been there this week because he's down dealing with something. So it's not just football players, it's everybody this time of year.
And everybody needs to get ready for Sunday because that is the next Eagle game where they try and get to 11-1, and it is the Tennessee Titans coming to town, and it is A.J. Brown against his former mates. And he was asked about it a lot yesterday. He said all the right things. Nick Sirianni and his media availability also said the same thing. He just needs to be A.J. Brown. Doesn't need to be any more than that. Doesn't need to try and do any more than that. You buying any of that, or do you think that A.J. Brown comes into this game pretty emotionally pumped up?
Did you see Nick after the Indianapolis game?
Yeah.
That's my answer to that. He said the same thing. Yeah, it means more. But you got to control it. I think that's what Nick was trying to say, and we'll see how it works. I think the ball security issues may be a silver lining, the two fumbles, because he can focus on that and instead of getting wrapped up in the Titan stuff. But it didn't end well for him in Tennessee from a perspective of he was upset. He didn't understand why they didn't want to pay him. And I don't understand it, to be honest. Just, every team has a different sort of valuation chart, positions. They're a run first team. Maybe that played into it. And they decided to go in a different direction. And, he said he feels like he's won. I mean, his team is 10-1. Tennessee's still good, probably not quite as good without AJ. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, I mean, they drafted him. He developed into a really good player, and for whatever reason, they didn't want to pay him. And by the way, I don't even think that was Mike Vrabel, because at the time, I remember Mike was kind of upset. He wanted AJ Brown to stay around. So you got to make those difficult decisions, and the Eagles are going to have a lot of that after this season when we talked about all the guys on contract years. And not everybody's going to be back, but it is interesting when you have such a young player, because AJ's still very young, at the apex of his game. Why you go away from that, I still can't figure it out from the Titans' perspective, to be honest.
But I will say this for the Titans in respect to the trade. A.J. Brown has been a major addition for the Eagles. He's having one of the better wide receiver years in the entire National Football League. It wasn't like Tennessee got skunked in the deal.
No.
They got a first and a third. The first they used to pick Treylon Burks, who is attempting to replace A.J. Brown. And he is steadily improving as the year's going on. He's not A.J. Brown. He's probably never going to become A.J. Brown. but he has shown what you want to see out of a rookie wide receiver. Improvement as the year goes on. They took the 3rd round pick, turned it into two picks, traded it, and got 2 picks. And both of the guys they picked in those spots are starting for the team right now. So when you say we traded a superstar for 3 starters, they did add 3 starters. All 3 of these guys are starting for Tennessee right now. I don't call that trade a lose. I call it a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally, the biggest example of that recently everybody talks about is Stephon Diggs, which turned into Justin Jefferson, and that worked for both of those teams. It rarely happens that way. This might be another example of something that ended up helping both teams. I'm more from the perspective of, I'm in the camp of if you get a good player and develop a good player, you probably should keep that good player. And there are other ways to look at it, as you mentioned, the numbers game, and that's obviously the way Tennessee's going to spin it, turning it into 3 potential difference makers. But he's also 25. I think that part enters it as well. It rarely happens. So to me, it was, all right, we don't want to pay this position what AJ is going to get paid. That's what it came down to for the Titans. And they're a run-first team. I mean, they're built around Derrick Henry. So maybe for them it makes more sense than the average team. But I think that's a little bit too hyper-focused because that can change overnight. And it's more likely long-term, hopefully Derrick Henry for them has a more long and successful career and continues to play at the level he's playing at. But to find the next Derrick Henry, that probably ain't happening. So you're more likely shifting your sentiment down the road to more of a traditional today, what's traditional in the NFL, and that's pass happy offense, whether it comes with a new quarterback as well. It's more likely you're going to shift from a philosophy mode than continue in the same direction. So that's the part, I guess, that I don't understand from their strategy standpoint.
But I do like to think, and again, that maybe this is the general manager DNA in me. There's a percentage of fans out there who think that every trade has to have a winner and a loser. And we've thrown that phrase a lot around here on Birds 365 that Howie Roseman wants to, strives to, and oftentimes does win trades. Howie Roseman won the A.J. Brown trade. But I'm telling you, the Tennessee Titans won the A.J. Brown trade too because they came away with 3 players. And they needed to upgrade at the other positions, offensive line and secondary, where they added 2 players with the 3rd round pick they got from the Eagles. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because the other team wins the trade doesn't mean Howie Roseman had to lose it. No, he didn't. He got A.J. Brown. He was a perfect fit, exactly what they were looking for during the offseason. So Howie can take a victory lap, but it doesn't mean the Titans can't take a victory lap as well. I hope you're right about A.J. Brown focusing in on the fact that 2 weeks running, he's put the ball on the ground. And that is the main attention that he's paying this week. I'm a little nervous because you correctly pointed out that Nick Sirianni said all the right things leading up to the Colt game, and then he decided to jump on a bench and call out both Eagle fans and Titan fans after get a little crazy on us, did Nick. Yeah. I think A.J. Brown is that same kind of emotional guy. And, hey, if he does what Nick does and he doesn't go off until after the game is over and it's a celebratory show of emotion, okay, yeah, some people may get on his case for it. I won't that much. I didn't get on Sirianni's case all that much. Some people thought that Sirianni had a lesser game because of it. And I don't even know if I buy that because Shane Steichen was the one who was calling the plays, and I don't think he was all that motivated. I know he and Nick are tight, but I think he called the game he called, and he called it just well enough for the Eagles to pull out a victory in the 4th quarter. I'll admit some reservation. I think A.J. Brown is someone worth keeping an eye on. That the fact that he is uber motivated to have a big game this week. Hopefully it pushes him to new heights rather than takes him out of his lane a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's more likely. I think the issues with AJ recently were the ankle. You remember he got banged up early in the Washington game, I believe it was, and then he wasn't right, and obviously the illness and the burst blood vessel and losing 7 pounds, and that you're not going to be at your best in that type of situation. So he's had some issues over the past couple of weeks, and I do think he's healthier, and he wants to play really well against this team, and I think he will. I think he will, because I think he's a dominant player, and I think because of health reasons, he hasn't been quite as dominant over the past couple of weeks, and I think you're going to see him getting back to more of the normal AJ Brown.
And if my concern for AJ Brown is this, not a lot. My concern for trying to stop Derrick Henry is that, because Derrick Henry is arguably the best back in football. He wasn't last year because he was hurt. Kudos to Jersey's own Jonathan Taylor jumping in and taking that spot for a season. But I'll tell you that I still think Derrick Henry's the best back in football and is again this year. Josh Jacobs may lead the National Football League in rushing because he had an unbelievable week last week, including a mega run in overtime that put him up and over the top in the lead for the rushing title. We saw last week Derrick Henry can be stopped. The Cincinnati Bengals stopped him. They held him to under 40 yards rushing, but they did so by loading the boxes. And they brought a bunch of guys to the line of scrimmage and an extra linebacker on the field. And the Philadelphia Eagles just don't do that. Jonathan Gannon has his system. He plays it. He doesn't move off it. He is very strong in his belief that this is the best way to win football games. And, hey, the Eagles are 10-1, and the Eagles have the second best ranked defense in the National Football League. But there is something to be said for matchups, John. And Derrick Henry against the Eagle defense is a matchup that should concern Birds fans going into the game.
Yeah. Well, he's always a concern, as you point out. I mean, if he's not the best running back in the NFL, he's on the very, very small list to be considered in that conversation. So, even if you try to stop the run, he's a guy you have to worry about. We've talked a lot about the Eagles' philosophy, and their philosophy is stop the run as much as you can with a light box, and then try to limit explosive plays on the back end as much as possible. I don't think that changes with Derrick Henry. I don't think that changes at this point of the season when you're 10-1. I don't think that changes, more importantly, with Reed Blankenship playing safety and Josiah Scott playing nickelback instead of Avonte Maddox and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Cincinnati, and that's what that former defensive coordinator who is very, tied in with this team. I'll give that hand. You can stop anybody if you want to stop the run, including Derrick Henry, including Zeus himself, if you want to stop the run. If you want to put all 11 in the box, you can stop the run. You're going to get killed in the passing game.
No, but so as many as they put in the box last week, Ryan Tannehill didn't kill him.
Yeah, well, there was a big play to Treylon Burks. That's what people are excited about down the field. You kind of saw it here with the Eagles, with Christian Watson getting loose. That's what you want to avoid as much as possible. And that's the difficulty. Now, you also don't want to give up 250 yards rushing. So it's a give and take. And if you start looking at it, but I think the Eagles, it comes down to 5-man fronts versus 4-man fronts. And they should play a lot more 5-man fronts this week. And Jordan Davis, they started his practice window. We'll see. They're not going to say till Saturday at 4:00 if he's going to be active for this game. But the fact that they started his practice window is a good sign that he's getting very close To have both of those guys, Jordan Davis and Linval Joseph, being able to keep both of them fresh and rotating, I think is really going to help the run defense down the stretch of the season. And we'll see if that gets started as quickly as this Sunday. But that's going to be the change, if there is a change. More 5-man fronts.
All right, and you mentioned that they activated Davis's window yesterday, so he is going to get a chance to at least practice this weekend. They got a decision to make come Sunday. If he's good to go, who comes off that defensive line? Because we know Marlon went to the injured list with Davis, and that's where you plug in your two additions of Joseph and Sue. If Big Jordan ready to go, is Milton Williams become an inactive guy? How do you think they slot guys out? I know several weeks they've gone with an extra offensive lineman. They've gone with 9. Last week they played Andre Dillard at guard because they believe they've got him up to speed enough. He filled in for Dickerson. They only had 8 offensive linemen dressed game day. How is the roster going to shake out on game day if Jordan is ready to go?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles. I mean, obviously, as far as I think the most important part is, as far as those two particular players, I think it's going to just, they're going to rotate amongst themselves. In other words, they're going to play nose tackle, shade occasionally, and that enables you to not play Javon Hargrave there, which is a good thing, not play Ndamukong Suh there, which is a good thing. So you don't have to waste reps on the nose for those guys who don't do it quite as effectively. So I think that part's the biggest. But yeah, if you're looking as far as the odd man out,
I'm looking at the numbers game, John. I'll trust Jonathan Gannon to put him in the right spots, however that may be. I'm just wondering who's sitting.
Yeah, as far as the odd man out, I mean, to be honest, who I would do? I'd not play Robert Quinn. I mean, he doesn't give you anything anyway on the edge. He wasn't good in Chicago. We talked about that a lot. Brandon Graham and Milton both have versatility to where they could kick outside and play a little bit of edge for you. That's the way I would go. They're not going to do that though. So yeah, I mean, Milton's the odd man out. It's Ndamukong Suh or Milton Williams. So, they brought
think
Sue
there's a
in for
possibility they could sit too?
No, that's my point.
Okay.
No, they're not going to sit Ndamukong Suh. So, yeah, to me, the odd man out's got to be Milton Williams. And that was one of my problems with bringing in both of those guys, because I think Milton is a good young player. And I think there was a necessity for Linval Joseph. I don't think there was a necessity to bring in Ndamukong Suh here.
Understand where you're coming from, and I like your solution. Milton could get outside and play a little on the edge. Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. You do it, no. I do it. I don't think the Eagles are going to do that. We'll ask that very question of our first guest for the day. We're Delaware-bound Martin Frank going to jump aboard with us here on Birds 365. Stay with us, Birds fans.